2,000 years ago, the Romans built the richest empire the world had ever seen. And then, with the same financial mistakes we keep making today, they slowly drove themselves into bankruptcy. The Romans knew money wasn't neutral. Money was also a weapon, a promise, and more often than not, a lie. Rome lived less by law books than by invisible codes. Unwritten rules about how wealth accumulates, how debt shackles, and how value is preserved. These weren't taught at school desks. They were learned in the trenches, in years of famine, and on the brink of collapse. That was the empire's real monetary law, the sum of the lessons that exalted Rome and the mistakes that gnawed at it. Sometimes a fine dilution that replaced tax, sometimes a solid coin that held up trust, sometimes a decree that froze the market. Every move either confirmed or violated one article of these invisible rules, and every violation returned first as a whisper in prices, then a murmur in the markets, and finally a crack in society. Today, we read the very same paragraph under a different heading: balance sheets, interest rate paths, temporary measures. The names changed, the logic didn't. Rome's unwritten rules of money, the rules that sought the source of wealth in real production, the cost of debt in the future, and the measure of value in trust, are still in force. If you understand them, you won't stumble on the same stones a second time. If you ignore them, history will shake you again in the very same place. The Roman Empire, at its brightest, around the 2nd century CE, was breathing across a region stretching from the Atlantic to the Euphrates. This system, which encompassed nearly a quarter of the world's population and bound more than 60 million people under a single money and a single administrative language, worked like an economic circulatory system with its road networks, port cities, and customs stations. As merchant ships catching the winds of the Mediterranean carried grain from Egypt, glass from Syria, and silk from China, forums rang with whispers of credit, notes, and prices, and the treasury swelled with contingents of tribute and tax. This prosperity lived not only in numbers, but in symbols. Coins bearing the emperor's face were not merely a means of payment. They were the central authority's word, the language of trade, and the guarantee of trust. The citizen believed that the money in his hand would be valid not only today, but also tomorrow, for money walked in step with the power of the state. That is how the empire's loom worked. Every hold emptied at the harbor, every stall set up in the market, and every supply reaching a border outpost poured trust into Roman money. As long as that trust endured, the price of grain, the wages of the legionaries, and the contract in a distant market beat in the same rhythm, from the Atlantic Ocean to the banks of the Tigris. Yet the wheel at the center of this scene was money. And money is not just accounting, it also contains politics and psychology. Rome's golden age was made possible by the harmony of this triad. When logistics, law, and money locked together, the empire could govern both exchange and obedience. For a time, Roman money was considered as reliable as the modern dollar, until trust itself weakened. At the outset, Roman money was, in the literal sense, solid metal. Silver and gold you could weigh by hand, deriving value from their content. When a Roman bought his bread, he wasn't handing over an abstract promise. He was delivering refined, state-stamped labor. Money was the tangible blood coursing through the empire's circulatory system. But as the empire grew, that same money first became the strongest tool, and then the most painful fragility. Rome's enrichment for a long time fed not on production and innovation, but on conquest. Every new frontier meant more slaves, more mines, more taxes. War paid for itself as long as it was being won. So what happens if you build an order on endless expansion and the expansion stops? The Romans learned this the same way we did, through financial sleights of hand. As the pace of conquest slowed, the state swerved into new feats of engineering to keep its promises standing. It borrowed, raised taxes, and manipulated money. It used finance like a curtain to paint over the face of losses. As the ranks of court and army grew richer, the ordinary citizen was squeezed between debt, inflation, and corruption. Rome's collapse wasn't an explosion. It was the slow and stubborn dissolution of monetary confidence. As the metal of the denarius thinned, the price whisper of the markets turned into a hum. The hum turned into a break in trust. The great web that once stretched from the Atlantic to the Euphrates ultimately showed that it stood on a monetary narrative. Money was not only a measure, but also politics, psychology, and discipline. When discipline broke, even the gleam of metal couldn't cover the truth. Rome's story leaves us this line for today. If money collapses, the word collapses first. If the word collapses, society follows. The Romans didn't close their eyes. Philosophers, statesmen, and historians saw the collapse step by step and recorded it with ruthless clarity. Cato the Elder built the bulwark of frugality and discipline. He said, "Luxury would rot the republic from within." Cicero wrote that greed corrupts a country faster than external invasion. Seneca warned, "Wealth serves the wise, rules the foolish." Marcus Aurelius reminded us that wealth is not freedom, but temptation. These were not moralizing speeches, but economic warnings. Rome's moral slackening was the natural consequence of its monetary and fiscal choices. The paradox was stark. As Rome grew, its appetite for wealth multiplied. The state turned into a machine of consumption. Provincial taxes fed the legions. The plunder of conquered lands rolled over debts, and money printing sped up to finance promises. Every new coin sent a message louder than any speech or law. The Romans lived by the rules of money and fell by those same rules. 5 principles traced the empire's rise and foretold its fall. Today, those 5 echoes are heard in the economies of our age. Rule 1. Money is always political. In Rome, money wasn't just a shopping receipt. It was a loudspeaker of power. Like plastering the same poster on every corner of a city, the coin worked the same way. The face it bore carried the message, "I exist and I provide order," to every marketplace, every pocket, every border outpost. Augustus, who took the throne after the civil wars, understood this better than anyone. Instead of persuading the crowds with long speeches, he let the money speak. He stamped his own portrait and the message "Pax, peace," onto the silver denarii. Thus, every coin changing hands in the market said, "This order, this peace, this stability, all from me." Then Nero took the stage. The city had been reduced to ashes by fire. Reputation lay in ruins. What did he do? He painted over the coin. Onto the money came scenes of rebuilding, cornucopias, overflowing granaries. While the streets still smelled of soot, the coins were whispering, "Everything is fine." Money officially became propaganda. As the empire expanded, money didn't just carry messages, it became the regime's bulletin. In Trajan's time, coins turned into pocket-sized press releases you carried with you. We keep winning. Thus, every denarius became a pocket-sized empire. But here's the critical point. This shine became an addiction. Money, which at first represented wealth, was later mistaken for the thing that produced wealth. That is, value now seemed to flow not from production and discipline, but from the face on the stamp. That face, the emperor's, was no longer the guarantor of trust. It was a symbol reminding people of obedience. This is why every regime fights for control of the mint from day one. Because whoever mints the money writes the story. 2,000 years have passed. The game is still the same. The faces changed. The metals changed. The stage didn't. Today, papers that read, "In God We Trust," circulate. Mints are run not by emperors, but by central banks. But powerful politicians' eagerness to put their own symbols back on money isn't nostalgia. It's the message, "I own this," a declaration of ownership. In short, money is not just money. It is the voice of politics, the mirror of trust, and sometimes the mask of illusion. If you understand this, you see that what's in your pocket is not just metal or paper. It carries story, power, and choice. And a note, when the author of the story changes, the truth the money tells changes too. Rule 2. Debt is power. Rome was built on credit. Everyone from farmers to emperors lived on debt. Debt wasn't a problem, but a driving force. Yet debt was also a chain. Those who couldn't pay could lose their property, their freedom, even their family. Credit was a way to control the public without sending soldiers. Julius Caesar used debt forgiveness not as mercy, but as a tool of mass control. Emperors who followed used debt to buy loyalty and delay collapse. Rome's problem wasn't debt, but dependency. Bottom line, debt is a powerful tool. It elevates those who wield it. It binds those who misuse it. Rome's mistake wasn't using debt, but living on it. We see the same cycle today, only the names have changed. The mechanism hasn't. Rule 3. Luxury is a virus. Rome began in simplicity and ended in display. As luxury spread, discipline died. Imported silks destroyed local textiles. Gold flowed to Asia. The trade deficit widened. Rome grew poor not from war, but from an excessive lifestyle. When luxury becomes identity, collapse isn't a possibility. It's a timetable. Rule 4. Inflation destroys empires. The denarius remained reliable for centuries. Then emperors started cheating with money. The silver content was reduced. Prices soared. Trust collapsed. Diocletian tried to control prices by decree. He failed. Force replaced trust, always the final stage before collapse. Today, we don't clip silver. We print digital money. The method changed, the result didn't. Rule 5. When people stop believing in money, they stop believing in power. Rome didn't lose its money, it lost its faith. Trade collapsed, barter returned, people turned not to the state, but to landowners. Barbarians didn't destroy Rome. They filled the vacuum left by inflation. Civilizations don't fall by the sword, they crumble by erosion. Today, the world's reserve money is not the denarius, but the dollar. Yet the dynamics are the same. We spend more than we produce, consume more than we earn. We call inflation stimulus, debt leverage, deficit growth. The same illusion, in modern language. The Romans wore togas, we wear suits. The denarius became the dollar. But if we forget the rules, the result won't change. Money is not just a currency, it is character. The moment a society forgets this, the question of collapse stops being if and turns into when.